the Act is very clear. Section 15, subsection 2C of the PFM Act is what we call fiscal responsibility principles. That you can only borrow for development expenditure. And development expenditure, which I will show you, for 2023-2024 was 807 billion. 807 billion. However, the cabinet secretary, without approval from Kenyans, because if it is approved by the parliament, you have approved it, isn't it? Without your approval, he has come to borrow 688, 1.7 trillion, 1.5 trillion. That is the reason why you are being taxed heavily, because of these odious borrowings. Are we together? Which you did not approve. It is one man. After hiding the estimates of revenue, this is what he has done. Yeah? This is what he has done. Yeah? That's why the estimates of revenue zimewekwa hapa na wewe unapewa Finance Act. Mnapigana na Finance Act huku. Wanacheka wakimwona mkipigana na Finance Act. That's what they are doing. Yeah? Wanamwangalia. Hit mtu. Finance Act nini. Yeah? Now, I did this table for the purpose of showing you. If you look at the first column is what was gazetted by the Cabinet Secretary Treasury. And the second column is what was passed, assented to by the President as an appropriation act. You can see there was no estimates of revenue, isn't it? There was there was no borrowings, external loans and grants. What you passed was 313 billion. And that one you can earmark it to each and every project. If you go to now the budget for each government entity, you will see 10 million goes to road ABCD. That 313. So 313 is the only loans we should have for projects. So if you subtract 313 from 870 and 688, 1.2 trillion, which was 1.2 trillion, has no projects. They cannot earmark any project. Now, after this, after July, in November, 3 months after July, after the Appropriation Act was meaning, there was a supplementary budget. In November, there was a supplementary budget. The supplementary budget reduced external loans to 846 and increased the borrowings, the increased borrowing, domestic borrowing, to 870. To 870. So the total borrowings became 1.7 trillion. That is what now, by the aid of this financial year, there will be 1.7 trillion, and that is the reason why the tax rates must go up for you to pay what? Yeah? For you to pay that money. Now, this is now the budget. The now budget. This is the budget now for 2024 budget. Then you get the budget books of revenue. This is now what is to finance the expenditure. Yeah? Limit of revenue and expenditure. Now we are passing a law here without estimate of revenue, so that they can borrow, they can do whatever they want. There is no law governing them, no law controlling them. Yeah? When it is like that, this is if you go to current expenditure, go down at the top there, at the bottom there, you are going to see now this, what is given here. This is what you are going to pay. My figures, the books, just go treasury.go.ke, go to budget books, go and extract that one, go the current expenditure, go chini there. This is what you are going to pay, 1.2. External loan, principal, 330. Interest, 259. So the total payment you are going to do next year is 1.8. So the issue is this. Hata mkipiga kelele namna gani, ni lazima tax itoke, mlipe what? Yes. And that is the reason why you cannot be given estimates of revenue, so that you can analyze well. You can analyze you see? Now you're saying you're analyzing what? Against what? Analysis in see, it is against something, isn't it? Are you going to get those figures and say, tumechukua charge a lot? Against what? There must be estimate of revenue. This is what you should demand. Where are the estimates of revenue? According to the Constitution, Article 220, Sub-Article 1. Budget is estimate of revenue and expenditure. Give us the revenue so that we are able to analyze the Finance Act. You can imagine, we are paying 1.8 trillion. Good. Agree. Yeah. Tuko pamoja? These are not fictitious figures. They are figures which are even passed and enacted into law by our parliamentarians. And in the first place, they had not passed the loans, so that now we can stay this. If today development expenditure is only 724, only 724, but you are paying 1.8 trillion. It will be financed by what? By 1.5 loans in form of A in A. Tuko pamoja? Tuko pamoja? I'm saying you look at the State Department, the revenue loans will be 1 billion. What are revenue loans? Revenue loans are those loans will be paid in our consolidated fund. Anything you see A in A, you will never come here. You know? But what you see called revenue loans, it will be paid in our consolidated fund. So you can see now what will not come here, and we have signed that loan. What will not come here is 1.5 billion, which will be managed in those countries. They will procure their people there, but it is credited in our account as a loan. We do not know even the prices of whatever we are buying. Notice of drawdown. That is what becomes finance act, which is act, isn't it? Now, if you don't have the estimates of revenue, because right now, if the estimates of revenue were tabled, you saw the 688 domestic loans, isn't it? And 870 external loans. We would now be able to query, why are you borrowing 688? Why are you borrowing? This payment you are making of 1.8 trillion, of course you are getting from our taxes, which are in the Finance Act. It was used to fund which projects? Now you are being made to pay, isn't it, from the Finance Act? Because that's what is happening. Because if they come up with those heavy rates, taxing our vehicles and what have you, this money is going to pay 1.8 trillion. So, minus the estimates of revenue, we should interrogate the estimate of revenue. We should interrogate the expenditure which they have tabled. And one thing we should do is to fight that this Finance Act is unconstitutional. Until, yes.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. Very quick question, because I understand our problems didn't start now. They started a long time ago. Maybe could you just give us a picture of how bad the previous government made it in terms of this was the budget, this was the revenue, this was the deficit, and this is how much they overbought by. Just give us a picture of that.
Well, one thing is that I've looked at, let's see, I can say since the enactment of the Constitution.
Yes.
But 2013, 2014, when these youngsters became the leading, that is the time of revenue. The borrowings were chini. But the moment they started now borrowing heavily, imagine we are paid, isn't it? So it means to us the 20 trillion in projects every year. Can you even consume even half of that? So one, that's why we are saying that is odious debt. So odious debt, heavily.
Very good. Thank you. Hold it there. I want your advice.
But which actually is supposed to be there. I thank my colleagues Sam Waura and Cyprian for saying that some of these ideas that we keep. I have titled the word bandits economy, I borrow it from me. And listening to Bernard, it is obvious that effectively we have two budgets. There is a budget to finance official things and another budget of almost the same value that is raised through odious debt that is used basically to finance personal projects and the so-called corruption, which is what makes possible for people to wear shoes that they cannot finance from their budgets or non-businesses buy helicopters, and all these kind of things. So it is actually not by accident. At least Bernard, we can be able to trace the source of this money. That it is money that is supposed to be approved by Parliament, that it is legalized theft. If you don't get anything from this forum, just understand that the budget is a form of legalized theft. And the major challenge, if you are to ask me, that we are ever going to challenge this country, two things must happen. The president, his cabinet, and the minister. I don't know whether MPs understand it, but they are just involved in the game as facilitators. But we must have a situation, if we are ever going to change this country, to have a situation whereby we have a president in this country who makes a vow that this theft will stop. Because if this theft does not stop, it will explain why school feeding programs are being stopped, Linda Mama programs are being stopped, and every other assistance to the Kenyan citizens are being stopped with a view to ensuring that the budget available for personal use is as big as possible. So what's the point? I will go quickly because we understand that we need to deal with this issue. The issues I wanted to declare is that Kenya is a constitutional democracy. A constitutional democracy, and I will tie it up with the budget, implies and you are making a budget for the people, and for the ultimate benefit of the people. Number two, in a constitutional democracy, it means that all state and public officials exercise limited power. And by limited power, it means, for example, that when it comes to the issues of taxation, you cannot make a budget and you cannot propose tax measures in which you are effectively assuming that the government of Kenya is the beneficial owner of the money that people earn. You must actually respect that. Cyprian has earned a salary of 100,000, and you must peg yourself to what is reasonable to take. In previous governments, we had situations whereby there was probably a discussion at the cabinet level. But these moral restraints have disappeared.
In order to enact a law, you have to have where you're borrowing the legal provisions from. That is what lawyers will tell you. So when we are talking about value-added tax act, I just want to give you a summary of what it means and the journey it has traveled. First of all, is that there was Sales Tax Act, Cap 470. Sales Tax Act, Cap 470. That is what VAT Act, Cap 470, which was enacted on 1st of January, 1990, borrowed heavily from. The law we are using now, I hope I'm not so fast, but I'm given limited time also. The law we are using now is Value-Added Tax 2013, which was enacted on 2nd of September 2013. That is the law we are amending from 2013 up to current. And I want to speak a bit about the law. When an amendment is done in the bill, what is important is that there are sections of law. There are sections of law. They could be 66, they could be 50-something, they could be whatever. So VAT has also sections of law dealing with different issues. Today, we have not come to know what VAT Act talks about. We have just come to highlight issues connected with budget changes. So maybe in the future, it will be necessary for you to be taught what different sections of the law says. And then there are two schedules, the first and the second schedule in VAT Act. The first schedule deals with exempt goods and services. That is the first schedule. And the second schedule deals with exempt zero-rated goods and services. So whenever an amendment is made, it will touch on, I'll give an example of second section, which deals with definitions. Like now there's a definition which is included in the current one, invoice. So it is included because it wants to incorporate what we now use now, e-teams. It's incorporated to include e-teams. And then the other sections, there are also amendments touching on Section 17, which deals with deduction of input tax. But just like everybody else has said, previously, the government would have policies to promote tourism. The first schedule deals with exempt services, exempt supplies, which is composed of goods and services. And then the second schedule deals with zero-rated goods and services, which are normally referred to as supplies. Is that okay? Okay. Then I want to touch on something. The government previously used to have, when we are traveling within East Africa, Ugandans were better off in terms of following policies and following VAT principles. We went off a bit. But then, at the moment now, and again, if government will say that we want to promote tourism, so they enact policies which are connected with making sure that tourists would come. They would enact policies ensuring that agriculture would be able to thrive in terms of farmers giving inputs free of charge. But at the moment, if you look at, and even those who are familiar with the minister's speech, when the minister gives speech, every tax proposal has a reason connected with why it was introduced. But at the moment, if you look at what is happening, they are general proposals. Revenue, increasing revenue. So it's not addressing any sector or any particular issue that needs to be dealt with. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the proposals is now to remove, there was something which was exempt, specialized hospitals and equipments. Now it's supposed to move from exemption, and it will move to a different tax status. So that means it will move to zero rate or taxable. You remember people used to be treated outside the country because of the current situation of the hospitals we used to have. But at the moment, there's a time when there are some exemptions which were not used when we are having meetings during those days for a long time. So they could be removed from exemption schedule, but some of these are removed so that tax is now generated. And one which I need to talk about is ordinary bread, whose tax status now need to, from 1990 up to now, almost over 30 years, the status has been zero rate or exempt. And when, you will give me time a bit so that I explain this even for 1 minute. When a product is zero rate, for those who understand, somebody can claim input tax and somebody can claim, can be refunded. So bread manufacturers used to be refunded. But now when it moves to, when it's zero rate, then they would absorb the input tax. But when now it becomes taxable, it means that they will not be refunded, the manufacturers. And normally reasons which were given for exempting some of these things, some of these products, is because of there are products which are taken by ordinary mwananchi, like bread or maize or beans. But at the moment, there's just movement from zero rate to exempt to taxable. It means that we will reduce what is zero rate and what is exempt, and will remain with most of what is taxable. And in budget making process, if you you move into it at the late tail like this, when you did not begin in the beginning, it becomes difficult to challenge that proposal, because you'll be asked, look at, there's something I also need to explain also. When you're looking at an amendment, you need to refer to the current law, which is the law updated up to 2023. And then you look at the finance bill and then see the change which is made, so that of what benefit will it accrue to citizens in terms of taxation or exemption. So in general, for you to be able to understand some of these amendments, it is good to look at the past, what used to happen, and then you look at the current proposal and how it will benefit you or harm you, by looking at the finance bill and looking at the updated VAT Act 2013. Updated VAT Act 2013, you can get from the government printers, you can get an updated one from KRA, you can get it from law reform. So any of those sources are good enough. I think I can hand over the program again to you. With that, I think they can be able to analyze this and move forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. When we were discussing this meeting, we wanted it to stretch up to 4 p.m. and it was because we understood how heavy the topic is. I want help with the power, what is it called? This one. Yeah. So we knew how heavy the subject is. And what Sam and I have been doing since morning is to attempt a summary, so that when the consultants come to answer your questions, then we are able to, is it working now? Very good. So I want the consultants to read, and Martin, I want you to sit near Sam so that you can see what I'm doing with the summary, so that you are able to help us. The leaders who are here want to go back to their organizations and the faith communities, churches and religious organizations with something concrete that they can help their bodies and organizations with. That is really what we want to do. So I want to start where Mushere started us from and where Wakili Kibe has brought us to, and where Eliud started us from, and some of the things that, Martin has said now. And we've started with the background from last year and the outpour of emotion that was across the country. We've noted, as it has been said here, that the government continues to implement the IMF and World Bank imposed policies. And the technical term for that is that the government is required to maintain a minimum balance for it to qualify to receive funding from IMF. And it is because of this demand for minimum balance keeping that a policy was brought here in 2022 called fiscal consolidation. And it had 6 requirements. I will not go into that now. The impact of these policies are adverse, and this has been said. Now, one of the things that we've noted is that we actually do not have a revenue. Moshere really highlighted this. We don't have a revenue problem. We have an expenditure problem. We don't have a revenue problem. We have an expenditure problem. That is really what we are dealing with. For example, in this budget, where school feeding program has been removed, there is a 10.5 billion to State House to renovate. I'm just giving you an example. Yet the school feeding program was 3 billion. So you can see that we don't have a revenue problem. We have an expenditure problem. Fundamental concern number 1 is what Moshere has pointed to, Article 220, where we are discussing the finance bill without an appropriations bill and act, which then is the basis for revenue-raising measures. The example he has given is where we collected money last year under the housing tax, which the government is now lending to us in the name of investing in bonds. This is actually unconstitutional, and somebody should check, Wakili Kibe, whether this is not treasonable. We have been told about borrowing to finance recurrent expenditure, which is unconstitutional. Borrowing without providing for it in the Appropriations Act. Moshere has shown you that the borrowing is not provided for in the budget, in the Appropriations Bill, which then becomes the Appropriations Act. A new term has come up today: borrowing through irrevocable notice of drawdown. The example he gave us in the Forestry Department. The problem of sovereign theft, legalized theft, which has come up this morning. Too much borrowing and debt, which is taking too much of national revenue to debt repayment, both principal and interest on loans. You've seen that interest on loans is higher than the principal because it also covers for interest for the previous years, which is causing the defunding of many essential programs and projects, the example of the school feeding program. Article 4, which establishes Kenya as a constitutional democracy, and how that has been eroded, the lack of moral restraints, which have disappeared, the lack of fidelity to the Constitution and the people to realize the economic prosperity, the negating and undermining of the capitalist economic system and free enterprise, the example of the car tax, which is against the property right in the Bill of Rights, and it cannot be amended even by Parliament. It can only be amended through a referendum. But we have seen now that it's being amended through an act of Parliament. Wakili has told us about the problem of the government, which is asserting unlimited power to tax and render people poor. The gross abuse of parliamentary power to tax Kenyans. Example of, extending to touch on Article 35 rights to privacy by amending the Data Protection Act without public participation as regards the Data Protection Act. Surrender of Kenya's sovereignty to international and financial bodies. The diminished capacity of government of Kenya to provide solutions for the people of Kenya. Now, the questions that I have allocated to several of the consultants require that we start thinking about what are the recommendations going forward. And I'm doing this summary for purposes of attracting a discussion here in terms of how do we move forward. And by the way, some have remembered that I have gone to the extent of doing the summary, and Janet has not even said what she needed to say at the beginning of the meeting. But we shall repair all these. That the religious fraternity should submit substantive memoranda to Parliament, which urges Parliament to grow a backbone, because currently it does not have one, where there is supposed to be one. JK, you can look for language that we can use, which is not abrasive like mine. And tell off the executive on the areas that are patently unconstitutional, illegal, destructive to the economy and to the people of Kenya. I cannot be in a conference and I don't suggest something. I'm now suggesting that the housing tax must be reviewed in the light of what we've realized from last year, that you are actually raising money and now lending it back to us. I'm also suggesting that we now must use the opportunity to review the 16% VAT on fuel and the VAT on electricity. The school fees I paid when I was doing my master's in public policy and economics, one of the things that I was taught is that you cannot charge VAT on things that you do not manufacture or add value. You cannot import fuel and charge VAT on it, yet you didn't refine it here. You didn't process it here. What did you do to tax 16% VAT on fuel? That is the thing that as to now, we have to reopen the whole conversation. The need to go back to zero rating the most basic goods that Kenyans need to live and survive. This is in order to cut on the cost of living, which is a major problem. There is need to comb through the budget, as Moshere has told us, because there are a lot of things that are in the budget that are not supposed to be there, which is actually causing a lot of the problem that we are having. And therefore, there's need to start discussing in this meeting a strategy on public education, information, awareness, using our pulpits, our forums, our media, our everything that we can be able to use. Address the media as churches and specific religious bodies. NTA, Sam Mwaura is recommending, should support the media aspects of the KCCB, NCCK, EAK, Hindu Council of Kenya, the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims, NAMLEF, wherever you come from, and we are assembled here. When you are going to do your media strategy, I think we want to offer to be available to support, even if it's the Association of Sisters of Kenya, wherever you are coming from, that need to support the public, media approach. Strategy number 3 is on how do we approach Parliament to ensure that they uphold the Constitution and the law. Strategy number 4 is the strategy of targeting the President and the Executive. I don't know what those strategies are, but we are saying that from this conference, we must start thinking about the public engagement, the media and communication, the parliamentary and legal one. We are talking about how do we get the executive to comply with the Constitution. Right now, Martin has just told us the difference between zero-rated and exempt goods. What happened now? All right. And I've put it on the slides for broad education in terms of what zero-rated goods are and what exempt goods are, which Martin very ably explained, so that you can know when producers are refunded and when producers transfer the cost to the commodities that you buy. Just take note, you will come back to that. Now, the summary that I have now done from the presentation that came in the morning from Eliud is that we've looked through the presentation in terms of what is the good, the bad, and the ugly of this finance bill and the budget aspects that we've been speaking about. The good are there, and I will not spend too much time on that from the summary that we were given. There are some things that Eliud told us which we can live with because they are good. For example, allowable pension deduction being increased from 20 to 30, this is good. The finance bill proposing eco-levy on machines and etc., this is good for the environment. Income tax amended to provide for advanced pricing agreements. There are a few complications, but the standardization is for the good of the economy. Tax refunds proposals, currently VAT refunds settlement within 6 months, and that has been harmonized. And then there is the whole idea about, moving VAT from 5 million to 8 million. What the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry has been saying is that this is a 19-year ceiling that has been there for 19 years. Currently, 5 million is very little money. If you give Mama Mboga 300 days in a year to sell, they can actually reach the 5 million sales. It's not profit, it's sales. So the recommendation from KNCCI has been take it to 50 million for VAT for businesses and the selling to start attracting VAT. That discussion needs to go on. The bad include the banking services which will no longer be VAT exempt, which means that banking services will attract VAT, and they include check handling, processing, clearing, making advances of granting credit, telegraphic money transfers, foreign exchange transactions, credit and debit, all the things that Eliud was able to tell us. There's a repeal to Section 30A of the income tax, which provides for affordable housing relief. When you remove the housing tax relief, you are actually exposing more Kenyans to more taxation, which is actually very negative. And we have already started with banking services. You see the problem with the banking services. All those are going to be transferred to the users of banks. Now, this morning, if you have read the statement that has come from ICPAK, the chairman, Kakai, has released a statement this morning. I hope you've read it. Actually, they issued yesterday at their conference in Mombasa. I've only interacted with it this morning. They are saying that this is actually going to discourage Kenyans from using banks. And we may even be going back to mattress banking. So you are actually introducing things that are going to destroy sectors that we have progressed and where we have increased the number of people using the banking system to 72% from a minimum of 6 a few years ago. Number 3 is on the National Treasury, which has proposed to increase the rate of import declaration from 2.5 to 3%. Kenyans import a lot. When you do this, you are actually increasing the cost of a lot of the things that we need to do businesses and to keep our families going. Abandonment of the digital services tax, which has been spoken to this morning. This is going to attack digital creators and all the young people who are trying to hustle, as they were called. Very negative. The finance bill proposes tax interest on income from new infrastructure bonds. So you are trying to attract people to invest in infrastructure bonds, and you are increasing the interest you are charging on these people who are running interest from infrastructure bonds. You are discouraging investment in these bonds. The e-team system has just been discussed right now by Martin, and you can see the problems that it is going to do with the 2 million every month as a penalty. What this is going to do is that a lot of people will quit the business of doing invoicing. And so where is that going to leave the country? You are going to collect less tax anyway. And you are actually crippling businesses that are already in trouble. And then KRA corruption is going to increase massively because of these things that are being introduced. The following items have been moved from 0 rating to exempt. And Martin will explain that a little bit more. Motorcycles, inputs to manufacture of agricultural pest control, etc. This is what my nephew was telling me yesterday night, that watu wa boda wamefikiwa. Wamefikiwa. This is how munafikiwa, and the list includes matatu people, and the list is actually very long. You can see the next one on items that are no longer 0 rated: supply of ordinary bread, transportation of sugarcane from the farm to mills, supply of locally assembled mobile phones. I don't know why people even do some of these things. Supply of electric bicycles, supply of solar and lithium-ion batteries. The bill introduces withholding tax on goods supplied to public entities from 3% to 5% withholding tax. I don't know whether you have an idea what we are talking about here. If you are supplying 45 million worth of commodities and goods to a government department, you are first of all required to do a 3% previously of withholding tax. Now that has been raised to 5% of gross, which I don't know if you are doing your calculations what that means. Contribution to social health insurance fund, post-retirement medical funds, and the affordable housing levy, which will now be deductible expenses. Then there's now the ugly, which Wakili spoke about, and also Eliud in the morning. Amendment of the Data Protection Act to exempt KRA from constraints in access to personal data, where access to that data is deemed to be necessary for the assessment, enforcement, or collection of any tax or duty under a written law. Here, we are now amending the Constitution through an act of Parliament. This will have very adverse implications on the rights and freedoms, even the privacy of Kenyans, and must be rejected. The supply of ordinary bread will cease being VAT zero rated, as we have said, implying that suppliers will no longer be able to claim the input element, and they will now therefore pass the cost to the end consumers. I was listening to the presentation yesterday. The cost of bread is likely to go up by from 9 to 12 shillings, depending on where the baker is going to be located. And that will be transferred to the supermarket and to the consumer, as you would expect. Now, the infamous motor vehicle tax, which seeks to introduce 2.5%, the value of the vehicle with the floor being set at 5,000 and 100,000, as Eliud told us. Now listen to this. The penalty is 50% of the uncollected tax, plus the actual amount of the uncollected tax. I listened to one of the presenters. He's actually called Willie Sotieno. Willie Sotieno revealed something that I hadn't seen. He actually told us that this is the beginning of what we call haircuts. If this passes, because my education in economics tells me that there is a sales tax, an income tax, a wealth tax, which is the other tax? Exercise consumption tax, generally, if you can call it that. So a tax is either consumption tax, an income tax, all right? It is, which is the other tax I told you? Wealth tax, and there's a first one. Just remind me, please. I'll go through that again. Now, when you talk about, and Kibe was talking about it, of taxing a motor vehicle, Kibe, I want to correct you. That's not a wealth tax. A wealth tax is when you invest 10 million in treasury bills and then you earn interest. That's wealth. We don't tax you for having a car. That's not a wealth tax. It's not defined. That's a new kind of a tax because your car is an asset that depreciates every year in terms of its value. So you can't tax somebody for having a car. That's not a wealth tax. Wealth tax is when you invest, and when your wealth grows, we tax it because it has grown. So we need to really understand what is being tried here. And that's why it has been called a haircut. The intention is tax people's cars. Next year, tax their bank and M-Pesa balances. Are you with me up to that point? Yes. This conference is very important. Sorry? Look for people's things, do an haircut on their bank balance. That's not wealth. That's an asset. Now, you are taxing people for having a car. Next time, you will look for some more and say, how much does he have in the M-Pesa account? 73 shillings, 73,000, tax it. And then you go to the bank account, there is 115,000, take 30% of that. So this is a very important trial that is before us. And I please would request that we use the WhatsApps of everybody in this room and listen to Willie Sotieno in the presentation he made. It's just a 1 minute presentation, 1 minute, 26 seconds. This is actually the beginning of what we call haircuts. So you haircut on vehicles, next year you come for the M-Pesa and the bank balances. And that is when the banking industry is going to collapse in Kenya. The bill proposes to tax the income of registered family trusts, which was previously exempted. Now, this is not good news at all. It is actually raiding families and discouraging the establishment of family trusts, which is the practice that we have been encouraging, so that when the father or the mom dies, we don't see families, selling everything and collapsing the following month. So the practice was encourage the establishment of family trusts. Now you are now going to tax family trusts. so that people stop establishing family trusts. Where is that going next? So I have attempted this summary of the key presentations that have gone on this morning, so that when the consultants are coming to respond to the questions that you've raised, then we are actually taking our knowledge fund and trust from this meeting to the next level. And we have already started to point out, in terms of when you leave this workshop, what are we recommending that we do? Submission of memoranda is important. Reviewing the housing tax, reviewing the 16% VAT, calling for zero rating of essential commodities. And the two things that have come up from Kibe, which I have not included, I didn't have the time. Number one, and also Mushere, is that we must go back to the principal discussion of the problem of odious debt. Because 60% of our debt is actually odious, as you've seen. We have overpaid, and Mushere will come to tell you how we have overpaid. In the case of SGR, for example, he said it's already 647 billion. We have already overpaid. We borrowed and spent 543, but now we have paid a trillion, which tells you that we have actually overpaid. So who is this who's taking our money? Where is it going? If you borrowed 500 billion, you've paid 1.2 trillion. These 700 billion, who has it? Where is it? So all this money that we are told that we are owing, do we actually owe? That's the question that we must discuss in this conference even as we go forward. So allow me, you can clap for me for that summary, so that Sam and I have really overworked to try and summarize what was being presented here by very able consultants. And I'm not sure that we captured everything that Mushere, for example, said, everything that, for example, Kibe said. We were only trying to capture it so that we have something to show. So now allow me to call the consultants to respond very briefly. Eliud has stepped out. When he comes, he will have the opportunity to speak. So I'll start with Mushere, and then I'll do Martin and Kibe. If Eliud is here before that time, he will also speak to us. Mushere, hold it right there. Daktari, come. This is our representative from the Kenya Christian Professionals Forum, and he's also a medical doctor. He wants to make the problem even more complex before they respond. Pose the questions to them.
Good afternoon. Now, I just wanted to give you a small glimpse of why part of the reason we think the data protection is supposed to be amended. Now, we have been put in the e-TIMS, so doctors are now supposed to invoice on e-TIMS, like everybody else. There is no exemption. Now, when I do the invoice for the treatment I have given you on e-TIMS, I'm supposed to give your personal data. So I'm supposed to say I have treated Kimani, and he had Kaswende, and this is how much money I've charged him. And if you want to claim that money, now you must give me your PIN number to add to the invoice, so that eventually the taxman can know you paid me, so you can get your refund. So it becomes very delicate because I am not allowed to release patient data. And we have been having that fight with KRA. So we were very surprised when we saw they are now planning to amend the Data Protection Act so that they can solve that problem that we are trying to tell them exists. Now, it's also important that we know the tax point of income tax is supposed to be at the point of receipting the money, at the point when I receive the money. But when they are capturing e-TIMS and invoices, there is a risk that you may be asked to pay for invoices you gave that you were never actually paid for. so that the tax point for income tax needs to be on the point of payment and not on the invoices that we have given. So those are some of the small areas that I just wanted to mention, just for the audacity to change the Data Protection Act, because doctors have been fighting to protect your personal data, is really, for me, going very low. Thank you.
Now, I hope we are trying. I hope the conference is adding value to you. Allow me to, invite our country director for Christian Aid. I told you she was supposed to say something in the morning and she did not. So that she makes an intervention at this stage so that when our consultants are coming to respond, she's part of. Please rise to the. Let me see. Do you want? I try and use that, please.
All right. Thank you very much. I thought if I come here, you might not see me because I am height-wise endowed in that way. But good afternoon, everyone. So it's nice to be here. My name is Janet Ngombalu. I'm the country director for Christian Aid in Kenya. We are very delighted to be here. We work in partnership with the National Tax Association because it is important for us. We exist because we want to work against extreme poverty, and we see that the reason that we are here today is because the root causes of poverty are man-made. We are here because our people continue to be impoverished because of a systemic process that we have seen, sometimes even enabled to happen. We want to be able to stand together as a people and continue to say no to continued impoverishment of our people. And that's why for us, economic justice is very important to us. It is one of our field items where we work on governance and human rights. And we have been engaging on these issues of tax in Kenya, but beyond Kenya, we've been engaging with the IMF and the World Bank. We've been engaging with the financial architecture across the country to make sure that this discussion doesn't continue. But what saddens me is that we continue to follow the same path that is not getting us anywhere. Last year, I spent most of my time in May, June, July, transversing the parliament, the church, everywhere, talking about the finance bill. And as you heard, we were told no comma is changing. What is going to change in 2024? Because we are faced with the same, maybe worse, of case. Do we have the energy to do the same thing and nothing changes? Do we want to remain in that aspect? So we are thinking that this time things have to be different. As a church, as a people, as custodians of Kenyans, we have to begin to rethink the process in which we are re-engaging, in which we are standing up for our people and ourselves, but in which we are standing up for our country. So as Christian Aid, we will continue to be part of this journey. We are working both through partners. NTA is our partner. We have TISA, and we are members of the Okoa Uchumi Coalition as well, where is the platform where we have been engaging. And for the Christian platform, for the faith-based actors, interfaith-based actors, we are continuing to rally and get into this discussion because it is important for the people of Kenya if we are going to remain as a sovereign state. So thank you very much for having us. We are happy to continue the discussion, and whatever happens from this meeting, we want to be part of that process and we'll continue to be together. So thank you, everyone. And we have my colleague here who is going to continue after the afternoon session. And if anyone wants to reach us, NTA will be able to reach out to us. So thank you very much.
That is very, very, very important. Who did we say we start with? Are you happy that Janet continues and Action and the Christian Aid continues to support this process? Yeah. No, she needs to get that feedback that without that kind of support, this kind of work supported by NTA and others is not possible. So we can't meet, we can't think, we can't develop documents. So did we say we begin with Martin? Yeah, we begin with Martin. Then, or do we start with do you want to start the responses? Yeah, begin the responses, please. 3 minutes, very quick, so that we take a round of questions and see what to do.
So I have two queries that were raised here on a matatu. That's all. Yes, and it is in two sections or two portions of it, but it will appear to me like the last bit of it, that is 0.5% of 20,000 salary. I believe that is the housing levy. It is not connected with the matatu. Maybe whoever brought it up will be able to clarify. But anyway, for the case of a matatu, whose motor vehicle tax is 100,000, for a whole year, that will work to 273 shillings per day. So, assuming that that matatu is generating 3,000 shillings per day, then it means the motor vehicle tax will reduce that income by 273 shillings, and the net income will be 2,727. Now, the second bit of it, of 5% of 20,000 salary, I am not able to understand it, unless maybe there's some information missing.
Thank you, sir. I meant that if you divide, say, an average of 3,000 shillings per day to pay for the 100,000 motor vehicle tax. If he has 3 trips in a day from Nairobi to Meru and back or somewhere, that means, and there's 10 passengers, that means that each passenger has to pay 100 shillings extra on their journey. So that means 100 up, 100 back. That's 200 shillings extra for the average mwananchi. Now, if you're a husband with a wife and 2 kids and you have to pay full fare, that's an extra 400 shillings each way. So I was just suggesting that all of the taxes that are being introduced should be reduced down to practical ways that ordinary people can understand them. Yes, what are the implications of this tax for the ordinary man? The 20,000 shillings salary, so if you're earning 20,000 and then you have to take a return trip, it's an extra 0.05% of your salary being taken by the government indirectly. Yeah. So then 1.5% housing tax, 0.5% motor vehicle tax.
I think that let's appreciate that, because if we don't communicate that way, then these taxes, those are things government is doing huko nje. But once people understand that the motor vehicle tax passes and the fare increases, then people will say, this is not a problem with the people with vehicles. Because that's what Ruto has managed to do. Divide the people between those with vehicles and those who do not. Then people who use matatus don't realize that they're the ones who are actually going to fork out money, to ensure that the matatus can pay their 100,000 shillings per year. So that is what we really need to understand. Please carry on and conclude.
Yeah, so in that case, then it is one whole question that has got the salary 20,000 shillings. I believe that is per month. And yeah. So I'm not able to relate it to the matatu. Because this is
once the fares go up,
yes,
it means that the one who's earning 20,000 will pay more from their salary because of the new increase in fares. You follow that now?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's
in that case, I'll rework it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
okay.
you.
Please, let's appreciate Eliud. Martin, please. 3 minutes.
Let me just quickly explain the difference between zero rate and exempt. Zero rated goods are goods and services which are, can somebody give me the moving mic? Yeah. Okay. I want to explain the difference between zero rate and exempt, which I found in the first schedule and the second schedule. What the law says in definition in the second section is that exempt goods are goods which are listed in the first schedule. Goods and services listed in the first schedule. So that is one condition. And then exempt goods, when they are not subject to tax. So the tax is zero, the way it's written there. But when it comes to zero-rated goods, just like I said, a zero-rated manufacturer or somebody who sells zero-rated goods is subject to tax. But is subject to tax at the rate of zero. So if my turnover for a month is 1 million and the tax is at zero, my tax will be how much? Zero. So there is a distinction between no tax and zero tax. And there are benefits connected with zero tax. So I think I'm through with that. I'll move on to the next. Then maybe you can quickly go through this one. So I'll just look at what has tax. I'll look at what has tax implications. The others I've left to you. Let's move to the next one. I just want to beef you to beef. Okay.
So we start with
anything with the
banking services. 15% for the removal of the relief.
By the way, most of these financial services were exempt. Now, when they are going to be taxed, and VAT, just like he said, is taxed on consumption. So when you go to get a check, and as supply is defined in VAT Act, when you go to and get a checkbook, have you consumed? Those are things which used to disturb us when I was still employed in KRE. So to me, I do not see consumption there in terms of these services which are offered in the bank. But they are VAT exempt, but they'll be subject to VAT. It means that when I want a checkbook, I'll pay VAT as if I'm going to consume. Already there's tax on consumption if I buy a checkbook. So then I want to move to the next one. This is not the nothing. The ones I really want to comment on is housing levy. Yes. Because it has almost the same effect that we've discussed. This issue of housing levy, you are familiar that when it was first of all introduced, it was on employment. Then when they went to court, I did not have an opportunity, I've not had the opportunity to read that judgment. When it went to court, what sometimes is discussed in court is in connection with, you should have it's not fair because it's only subjecting tax to employment. So then the government took advantage and said that, oh, we have policymakers, we have this opportunity, let's now tax other income. So now the way it reads is that employment income is subject to housing levy, and apart from that, any income which is not subject to taxation in A is also subject to taxation for housing levy. It means, recently they wrote to my mother who who owns a very small shop to be paying, they registered her forcefully in connection with turnover tax. She does not meet the turnover minimum of 1 million. So they have registered that, her. I decided to pay for her. And now they want her to pay housing levy. It means if she has a house, she will pay housing levy. And the impact of that is that rents will increase. That's what I wanted to say. With the time, rents will be increased because the landlord is paying for rent, rates, income tax, housing levy. And the same person, if you have turnover, again you pay housing levy. So it's like there's another tax which is almost similar to VAT, where whenever you have income, which is already subject to tax, you'll be paying tax on that. And then I also wanted to comment on the issue of zero rating of electricity. When you go to Treasury and you want to confirm that there is increase in terms of electricity is costly, you have to go with that bill. When you buy token, you have to look at it and then see how many levies are there. There's a time I tried, the more money you pay, depending on your location, if I load a token 5,000, I will get a token of less than 250 units, 2,200. So about 2,200 goes to levies. When I reduce the amount of money I'm paying, for example, when I pay 1,500, then I can get probably a token of maybe 1,000. So when you want to challenge that, you have to come with examples in terms of how it affects, where you think, why should you pay over 50%? Those are taxes which were charged in the early 70s, not now, the Sales Tax Act. And then I also wanted to comment on something else. I've talked about electricity. I don't know whether there's any one small thing which is left, but I think that's all in terms of, let me see whether there's any, scroll to the next one, I see if there's any touching on taxation. I've touched on housing levy, I've touched on fuel and electricity. Anything else? Nothing.
When we are going to write the final memorandas, we will come back to you, both Martin and Eliud. We are going to come back to you. We will go back to Moshere, and we will also go back to Kibe, because we must go out to the public with documents that are strong and are, intellectually, ideologically, constitutionally, legally grounded. That's what we want. Thank you so much. Martin, Eliud, allow me to call Moshere. I'll come back to you, please. Let's listen to Moshere, very brief response, then we conclude. Please. No, use this. You want to move around?
Mm. I can use both. Yes. I think I've been given some questions. Yeah. One thing I would like to tell Janet is that there's no strong voice than the voice from the men of God. If they get the right information, I don't think there is any mountain they cannot bring down. So it's a question of getting the proper information, factual information. Then if you talk, people have talked. There's a question here, somebody says, in a budget making, what should be considered first? Estimates of expenditure or estimates of revenue? I'll answer this way. In the government, or the public, budget making is by the MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies. Every agency has what we call a strategic plan. And the estimates, the annual estimates, they derived from the strategic plan, including estimates of revenue. So all estimates actually come from MDAs. So we can say these estimates go hand in hand. Or what happens is estimates of revenue are, after the MDA has done estimates of revenue, they are sent to Treasury. Estimates of expenditure are also done by the MDAs, and the budget is actually formulated by the MDAs. But today, even after the MDAs has done the budget, it is hijacked by Treasury and the National Assembly. You have seen the chairman of the Appropriation Committee, the Budget and Appropriation Committee, is now the one who is talking about the budget, isn't it? Why? Why? Even Treasury is supposed only to consolidate the budget to Parliament. And they are not supposed to amend that budget unless it is amended by the respective MDA. So they go hand in hand. You know, I think that question is enough. The other question is, somebody is asking, is the finance bill faulty because it is not preceded by the Appropriation Act, or because it is a burden to the lives of citizens, or because the government is trying to agree with the demands of IMF, or it is government is not meeting Kenya's expectation, or is it the bill totally offends the law? If you look at all of those ones, yeah, it's because of all that. So, yeah, because you see, and the most important thing is this: the Finance Act bill, it's unconstitutional because it is not addressing the estimates of revenue. Yes. And as we went through Article 221 and Article 220 and Article 221, there's nowhere finance bill was. Because it is in the PFM Act for operationalization of the Act, of the Constitution. And because the Constitution talks about estimates of revenue and expenditure, and now you have come up with a finance bill, and there's no estimate of estimates of revenue, which are in the Constitution. Is it constitutional? It's unconstitutional, as it is. Okay. I have somebody who has said, why are local banks lending money to the government illegally? Then he says, when are we going to court to stop illegality? Let me tell you one thing. I've done analysis. I call it fraud examination, because it's beyond what is being done in this country. Treasury is operating what we call Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme. Fraud scheme. It's a pyramid kind of a fraud scheme, but on investment. we saw after the budget how much estimates of revenue did the cabinet secretary? It was 1.5, eh? So if you deduct the legal one is 1.2. And it was not earmarked to any project, isn't it? It's, yeah. I've said trillion. A trillion. Now, what happens is this. If you follow the gazetted statement of actual revenue and the exchequer issues, because like the one I show you here, there were borrowings in July, and the government borrows on two circumstances. One, for development expenditure. The other one is for cash flow, short-term borrowing for cash flow purposes. We are now, in that particular case, you have overdraft and the treasury bills for 3 months. So, those domestic borrowings you saw there were for what purpose? And already, the development expenditure was fully funded, as I had shown, that in 2023-2024, tax revenue for funding the projects was 493 billion. And funding or financing from borrowing was 313, isn't it? So it was fully funded. And that is the reason why I asked the question. When we are being told we are going to IMF for budget support, which budget? I think I showed you there, it was fully funded, isn't it? 313 and 493. Then you are going to IMF for budget support. Which budget support? Why I say it is Ponzi scheme, what they are doing, the fraud they are undertaking is, instead of using our taxes to finance our activity, we borrow to finance our activity, and then we use our tax revenue to pay for the loan. I did analyze and removed the borrowing and left only the external borrowing which are lawful. I used our tax revenue, and the final is that I had a surplus. You see? Why they are doing that is because when we are doing the Constitution under Chapter 12, we did put a lot of strong controls to safeguard public money. Therefore, one of the things is to withdraw money from the consolidated fund. We made sure it was like drawing water from a stone. Because there must be a budget, you know the process of budgeting and what have you. And then when he is requisitioning money for expenditure in the budget, you requisition treasury requisitions the control of budget. so that the money can be removed. But if you want to remove money from the consolidated fund, the easiest way is to create debt. Because you require only 2 signatures. Control budget signature and the PS Treasury. You don't go the wrong way of the budgeting. That is the reason why they are creating debts. Borrow and pay back, and they benefit from the interest. How much was the interest? Yeah? Higher than the principal. So, my friend, that is what's happening. They are benefiting from the interest. So they are operating a Ponzi scheme, and we will never come out of that unless we face them proper with facts. Like now, the question is, one thing you should ask them, because this financial year, 2023-2024, based on the supplementary budget, both domestic borrowing and external borrowing amounted to 1.7 trillion. So ask them, what did you do with those borrowings? Which projects did you finance?
So one of the things that I hope that you've realized is that the kind of experts that we requested to facilitate this, the kind of education you are getting in this conference, you can't get it in any university. Do you agree with me? It's serious business. You must have a Moshere Bernard near you to discover some of these things. They are not taught in a university. You must have a Martin who has been at KRA and knows all the loopholes, and for you to know where the problem is. I hope you understand what we are trying to do here. So now, as Wakili Kibe comes, please, I'm looking at my time. We are at a quarter to 2. Today, you will have to forgive us because you understand how heavy the subject is. Are we together? No, I really have to apply in advance for everybody to realize how heavy the subject we are dealing with is. Wakili, as you come, I want you to come. One of the things that I'm thinking about right now is something that when I was facilitating the conference of the 39 Anglican bishops came up, that may be the only way this can be resolved peacefully without a revolution is if our bishops, our sheikhs, our imams, our priests, our pastors wear their collar and they hold hands. For the Anglican bishops, we recommended that they should hold hands from All Saints Cathedral to State House. The Catholics should start from Waumini to State House, because you see we have very many reverend sisters and bishops and priests. If they line on this road going to State House, and the Anglicans are doing it from All Saints Cathedral, and the PCA is from another area, and the HCK, the Hindu Council, is from another area, and SUPKEM from another area, on a certain day, then all their congregations will come out. And the paper will only be 2 pages, which is saying, these are the things that must end today. We shall have actually liberated the country without throwing one stone. And you know the police will not tear gas them. Or JK, you think they will tear gas them? I don't think they will. We shall have actually resolved. That is why this conference is for the religious sector. it is the most powerful one. Because if it's NGOs, they will be tear gassed, and in fact, they will be arrested, and they will not have resolved the problem. That is the reason why we thought that the religious sector, leadership and clergy and the lay, is the way to go. Wakili, have your 3 minutes.
Okay, it is heated than I thought also. Now, we got questions from 9 individuals, and some of them have more questions. So those whose papers have more questions, I'll only pick one, because I want to be respectful to everybody and to try and at least say something about their question. The first question, some of the questions don't have a name. The first question is by Bishop Dr. Getonga on the issue of motor vehicle circulation tax, where he asked whether it is a double jeopardy. It's actually a case of double taxation, which is prohibited by the law. The moment you have paid for your car all these taxes and you are now using it, you can no longer be charged any tax. It is the whole reason why the Constitution prohibits expressly double taxation. Now, the JN Karaoke, my brother advocate, has asked many questions. I'll pick one, but which is suggested by the other questions. Can we refuse to pay the odious debts and the consequences for doing that? I think Mozambique did something like that, and some countries that want to break away with sovereign criminality have decided to do that. But to be able to do that, it is what I suggested earlier. You need a president who can be able to say, I am not a criminal, and this republic will no longer be run as a criminal enterprise. Until that day comes, this will never happen. Because the truth of the matter is, all these schemes like you have heard about foreign debt, odious debt, is a conspiracy. Someday I had some discussions with lawyers working for the office of the Attorney General, and they could be able to say, like that one, they were dealing with this issue of tallow, that they had a lot of difficulty just trying to talk with people from the Ministry of Energy not to sell the Republic of Kenya, where you can be able to get a bargain deal, but you can't get a bargain deal. And that's why Kenya Power, you end up getting a lot of power, because somebody is willing to receive 200 million, but in the meantime, somebody over the years is going to get 20 billion from your country. So the lack of patriotism and this cheap criminality, where you get 30 pieces of silver, is a real problem. Even when we talk about this thing we did the other day, for this partnership with NATO, what is Egypt and Israel getting from this close alliance with America? They get serious money. But Kenya, you are getting 30 pieces of silver. And what is it that you are doing? You give Lamu to build you know that airstrip is longer than JKIA. Do you know the origin of this? The Arabs recently, when they wanted to fight Iran, the Arabs refused their airports, Kuwait, UAE, and all these to be used. So this is where the American will be flying their aeroplanes from. So it's a long-term serious problem for this country. Now, if we are going to get us fighting everybody across the world, what's in it for us? It can't be what appears to be 10 billion. It's a joke. And this joke must stop with somebody. And it must be told for what it is. This country is sold like Judas, 30 pieces of silver. That's where the problem lies. When MPs, this is a question, somebody didn't write the names, whether the MPs can be taken, charged in a court of law for not doing their job. I think the Parliamentary Privileges Act prohibits you when an MP votes. Many of them, by the way, they vote in good faith. You know, when for the Kikuyus, for example, you are voting for the Wamadhis, Wamatinga, Wamoshove, all kind of Wamadhis or Wamadhat. You are getting low-quality people. You know, you can't I stand here as a constitutional lawyer. How do you judge me? We expected an intelligent person to be there, correct? That's what you go with. So did I speak foolishly, or I seem to understand what I'm talking about? That's the standard. But if you get sheep, you can't accuse sheep for not being clever. Sheep are not clever. And therefore you cannot, and it is not a crime to be stupid. So if you elect an MP who is stupid, and people, you cannot tell. Somebody just has been going around your area, is not even a person who you can send to represent you on dowry negotiations, then you say he's going to be your MP. You can't be serious. Then how is he going to represent Kenya when he doesn't even, he's unable even to represent himself? That's where the problem is. So it's not a problem of taking them to court. It is the citizens of Kenya must take seriously. Don't get sheep to parliament. Get somebody to parliament who understands one or two things, that understands. Cyprian will not be surprised. Cyprian can tell their people, vote for me. They don't vote for him. Now, if you get the local guy who sells bananas from there to be your MP, we can't blame that guy. He can only sell bananas. He doesn't know these other stuff. And therefore, even as a country, we must be serious. Now, there is this question of what happens, what's the measure of public participation? Well, public participation is interesting, and listening to Mushere today, there is actually some layer of public participation that I saw that we don't have. You know, under the Constitution, there is a public participation under 221 or 220, where the estimates are supposed to be subjected to public participation. I do not think this occurs, and if it occurs, with the seriousness it deserves. Then there is a second layer of public participation, where every bill must be subjected to public participations. These have not been happening. So the measure of it is that, and the Constitution is clear, if you receive views from the people, if everybody says affordable housing appears to be a Ponzi scheme, a government that of a constitutional democracy, you cannot force people to have ghettos across the country, then you must drop it. But when you have a government that cannot drop something that everybody has said they do not want, then there is a problem about whether you are a constitutional democracy at all. When the Constitution itself says you must take seriously what the people said. Then there is Francis Wambua. He has very many questions, but the most important one, what can we do about public? Can we demo? Can we do all these things? Of course you can do all these things about IMF. But as you know, and you saw one of the package from America, is to give something for the police to enable them to fight public demonstrations. The reason why you cannot be allowed to meet is when you want to start official tyranny in a country, what you do, you ensure the police are equipped with military gear, so that if IMF is coming to force poison down your throat, you can never demonstrate against IMF, okay? So I don't think these things are going to happen. What we are actually having, you remember somebody called Augusto Pinochet? We are having the remaking of Chile in the Republic of Kenya. It starts as an economic issue, but when the people start fighting, then you start hearing disappearances. You start hearing people are being killed all over again. That is what is coming. So you don't fight what is happening now, then you will get Chile recreated in Kenya. That is where we are heading. Then the MPs and the senators, are they representing us? We have dealt with that. What can pastors do? Moshere and Cyprian have dealt with the issue. There is a lot. The first thing is to gather the correct knowledge. The other thing is to be morally sound and strong. Some time back, I went to Catholic somewhere in Gatanga for a funeral, and I was shocked. A Catholic father was actually saying, everybody here has been saying Ruto is a thief, Fifi is a thief. Who has taken him to court? What is it that is yours that he has stolen? I couldn't believe this was a Catholic father. So we must first of all change from this if we are going to go anywhere. You must also say that you will not just receive a car if you are a bishop and then you sell your conscience. Because all of us have gotten offers to stop talking and we have not. So choices must be made. The last questions, two questions, non-profit organization, principle of taxation. The principles of taxation have not been followed. We said that and we can engage further. The final question is from Sabahat, the lady there, that she asked if the bill is unconstitutional, where can it be challenged? Of course, you start with the High Court. But when we say that you start with the High Court and we must do this, what happened when with the last High Court decision, we just accepted that a decision had been given that we were going to challenge in the Court of Appeal. As Moshere said, the life of the Finance Bill 2023 is 1 year, isn't it? The appeal has not been heard. So even if that appeal is heard, it is what we say as lawyers, it has been overtaken by events. Therefore, the real solution from a legal point of view must be with the High Court. And the High Court should not be allowed, if at the very basic level the Constitution says, a statement of revenue and expenditure. A judge of the High Court and 3 judges to start with sitting cannot be allowed where they say this is a budget that goes against the plain reading of the Constitution. So that it is not an issue that has discretion. If this thing is read, it is read. If a judge of the High Court, in order to assist a criminal government to continue doing criminal things, says it is green, then the judge is engaging in treason. And the judge must be engaged that judicial treason will not continue to be permitted. Because that decision is treason, if you ask me. You cannot have a situation which is in black and white and you look for all reasons. And then at the end of the day, what is it that happened? It has enabled Ruto to collect more money than he was collecting previously. Isn't that the case? Because now you said everything must pay. That is why Mama Mboga is under attack. So Ruto can only thank the High Court for enabling him to give him more money. So thank you very much. In the event, and I believe I might have to go, I'd committed myself to go somewhere at 2 p.m. You will allow me, but I am readily available for any additional work that you may want me to assist. Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Please allow me to, let's give Wakili a better clap. There is hope in this country, don't you think so? Yeah, we have many challenges, but there is hope that we have our very best in this country who know where the problem is and they will help us to solve it. I want to welcome Sam Mwaura, one of our co-organizers who has been listening to us to give us direction. I wanted us to do group work to deepen the conversation. We are at 2 p.m. It's not possible. So let Sam come and give us direction. And then Sam, remember to, probably I can do that, to invite one of our clergy to give us a closing prayer. And Alan, draw near so that you give us a vote of thanks, please.
Now, this is one of the most important and most interesting workshops that I have personally attended on any subject. What we have listened to this morning convinces me, and I'm very difficult to convince, that we have Kenyans who have the solutions that this country is looking for to get us out of the mess we're in at the moment. Because of the complexity of the subject at hand and the technical nature of the presentations that we have listened to this morning, our first recommendation is that we do not have conclusive resolutions out of this workshop that can be the final product of the workshop. And rather, I would propose that we agree on a framework that will enable the consultants and a few technical people to translate what we have discussed today into a draft memorandum for presentation to the religious leaders across all the religious organizations, for them to adopt it and then present that to government as the position of the stakeholders led by the religious organizations. The second proposal is that we depart, and strongly, from how we have done things in the past. I was heavily involved personally in the review of the 2023 Finance Bill, and we made a substantial submission to Parliament and government, joining the Kenyans, 93% of the Kenyans who rejected that bill. And I was shocked that all our good recommendations were shot down, and the proposals that we had rejected were rammed down our throats by government. And we were left as very helpless people on what to do thereafter. So to get away from that, I am recommending that we adopt a different approach. And the approach this time, which will be perfected by the technical people, is to review the finance bill from its constitutional and legal aspect, so that we deal with every proposal in that bill and point out where it contravenes the Constitution and our laws. Thirdly, I would then propose as a basic recommendation that we ask the government to follow the law in the formulation of this finance bill and the budget thereof. This will bring a major confrontation between us and government, because the government will insist on continuing to formulate the budgets against the law. But there comes a time when the citizens are called upon to make a stand. And this is one such time. We will make a stand that the government must follow the law in formulating this year's budget. They have a very tough position, which is backed by facts. Facts in the sense that we will demonstrate where the finance bill and the budget that will follow from it contravenes the law. We will carry out massive civic education for the citizens and advocacy thereof. In order to sell our position, let us not leave the government as the only party that sells its position, the position that is defective because it's against the law. Let us establish our position and go out to the citizens and sell that position. Let us understand that while we challenge the bill from the position of the Constitution and the law, citizens will want to hear the implications of what is being proposed by government on their lives. And I like the example that was given on the implication to the matatu operator on some of the suggested tax increases. We will analyze that and give the implications for every recommendation or every proposal in this act, so that the citizens can understand that it is they who are directly affected, and we will help them to understand the nature and the manner in which they are affected, so that we can get their support from an informed position. And finally, let us follow the principle and understand this very carefully, that it is the citizen that is sovereign, not government. It is the citizen who has the final say. And let us not let the citizen down by not supporting them to enforce the sovereignty that they have been given by the Constitution. So those are the principles that will form the framework that we will use as the technical people with the consultants to now complete the process of creating the memorandum that will be considered by the leadership of the religious organizations on behalf of the stakeholders. So I would like to now put this one to vote. Are we in agreement with the position? That's the mandate we want to hear. Are we in agreement with our proposal or the proposed way forward? That's the vote I needed. Thank you very much.
I'm requesting if Alan can come to help us with the vote of thanks, and Father John, if you can please come, Father John, to help us with the closing prayer. Sam, why did you water down my proposal? My proposal was that, first of all, we are going to give you back the memorandum by Monday, because the deadline is 28th, which is Wednesday. Please let everybody submit their memorandum by Tuesday so that it is in by Wednesday. Is that okay? But Sam, my proposal was this. You know, desperate situations call for what? Yeah. So we can't leave Westlands without something dramatic. That is why we must say that we are saying the Hindu Council is mobilizing from Westlands. The Muslim community is starting from Jamia Mosque. The Catholics are starting from Waumini. Even the Adventists are nearer from where they are at Maxwell. The Anglicans will start from All Saints. We must say that we are going to be led by our clergy. I'm looking at the faces of the clergy and also the religious. So that, I don't know whether I'm making sense to you. If we don't do that, even the media will have no story. They will not know who has rejected. So that is what we don't want our young people to be rounded and taken to prisons and whatnot for standing up for what is constitutional and what is right. So the clergy, that should be the core resolution, that the clergy are leading the country to present the memoranda to His Excellency the President in State House. I don't know whether you are with me now. Because the moment the people hear that the religious leaders are the ones who are taking, then they will know, number one, it's peaceful. Are you with me? Number two, that the president will be there to receive it. There's nowhere in the world where a president can be given an appointment by the religious leaders that we are coming to your office on this day to give you a peaceful memorandum, and he does not honor that. Do you think that's possible? It's not. So, number two, they will know that the president will be there to receive it. Number three, it will be the assurance that Parliament will fuata nyayo, because they are dictated from State House. So we are leaving Parliament huko because they are lapdogs. There's a difference between a watchdog and a lapdog. They have become a lapdog, so we have left them hapo chini, and we are going to the holder of the power. So the day that is appointed for that, 1 million Kenyans will come, because it will be peaceful. Do you understand? But if we don't say that, then there's nothing new for this year. It will be the same old, same old. So that is why I want to agree with your 4 items, but give the timeline and say that we are asking that the religious leaders help us to present this to His Excellency the President so that he can order Parliament to do the right thing, because he's the one who orders them anyway. Isn't it? Yeah. Why don't you come and give the vote of thanks at this stage, please?
Yes, shalom.
Shalom.
Bwana asifiwe. The room is already charged, so I will be inviting my colleague John to give a vote of thanks. I just want to give some housekeeping. One is lunch will be served where we had our breakfast, so we shall be picking our lunch and still have it within the hall. 2 is NTA has some IEC materials, information, education, and communication materials at the desk. Some of them are about the budget-making process, the PFM cycle, as it goes both at the national and at the county government. So in case you've not picked any, kindly pass by the receptionist desk, hapo nyuma, and then she's called our admin. I can see her really protesting already. So our admin will help you, and in case the materials are depleted before you get one, we will always organize on how you can get it. So while I was back there, I got to interact with a few of you asking about partnerships. So our Mr. Samson Mwaura, he is our board member, and he is in charge of partnerships. So for those of us who are away, far away from Nairobi County, maybe Nyeri and Nakuru and the rest, kindly get in touch with him. He will guide us on how we can handle the engagement, the partnerships that we really look forward to having, because at the moment, our engagements are within Nairobi, Kisumu, and Nandi County. So please, if you want to reach us for any further partnerships, engage with Mr. Mwaura during the lunch hour, and he will guide you accordingly. From the meeting, the way Cyprian has led us, after lunch, Mr. Mwaura is requesting to meet with the technical team, I think led by Mr. Mwaura. Now, okay, before lunch, he is requesting you see him. I think Mr. Kibe, the consultants, and the technical team, whoever belongs to the technical team, please, is requesting you see him before you leave for lunch, just to strategize on how we are going to move forward on his 4-point. President Uhuru left us with the Big 4 agenda, and I think Mr. Mwaura has revived the Big 4 agenda on the finance bill. So that will be a good one. And then lastly, I think moving forward, we will have a media briefing, and I think we will, based on the agreements that we will have, we will send out the communication to all of us so that you also attend the media briefing, just to create more publicity about the finance bill and our stand as religious organizations. So thank you so much for your time. I will welcome my colleague, John. He was not with us here in the morning. We work jointly, so he will give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Alan, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm the person between you and your lunch, so I'll try as much as I can to be brief. So first and foremost, we've clapped for the presenters, moderators, our consultants. I want us to clap for ourselves first. You can do better. Clap for yourself. So I'm Tommy John, a project officer with the National Taxpayers Association. And I'll just want to take you to our logo, and down there it's written, Pesa zetu, haki yetu. So it means that we all have a right to whatever is being collected by the government. And whatever the government does with our funds, it's us who dictate. And in fact, they are there courtesy of our votes, right? So by the virtue that you've been here since morning till this afternoon, no one else should have a say on your funds, on the resources that the government has collected from you. And therefore, we hope that going forward with the memoranda, the resolutions, and the technical group that will be guiding us on the next steps, will still move together as one. So, as the Taxpayers Association, there are things that we usually do. That is champion our tax justice, economic justice, and such, I think Mr. Mwaura, who sits in our board, this is a novel idea, and we really appreciate. And to also our partners, that is Transparency International, TI, we say thank you. Mzalendo, thank you. Christian Aid, which is also our donor, thank you very much. And Oxfam as well, who are also our donors, we say thank you. Next, I will also want to appreciate our consultants. Thank you for doing a good job. I know I'm an economist by profession, and sometimes numbers might not matter to anyone else unless they are broken down to a level that matters to you. So when you hear about diaper being taxed, when you hear about motor vehicle being taxed, it might not make sense because you are not probably driving that V8. And for those who are using V8, they are paid for by your money. But you can as well remember about that farmer who owns a pickup being taxed, and you as the mkulima going to procure probably fertilizer, which has been transported using that motor vehicle, there'll be an increment on that end. So when such things are translated to our level, we can easily relate. So consultants, thank you, and I'm looking forward to that report, that memoranda, and when the march will be called, a peaceful one, as it has been proposed, I hope we'll all be there. It is our responsibility. I would also like to extend great gratitude and appreciation to our religious leaders. I know the communication was very brief, but you managed to mobilize a team. Thank you very much. There are also some community members and representatives of different small-scale businesses. There is someone there. I know for those who walk within town, you've been able to see some demarcation, some yellow lines along different corridors. He represents the team, and yesterday we actually gave him a call, and he managed to mobilize some of the community members to be here. Over and above that, I want to appreciate the political class. I know this one is a hard one, and most of us might not be easy with this appreciation, but there are some who have managed to be here. And I know as much as not all of us like the Bunge Towers and the parliamentary buildings, there are some who are in for a good cause, and I hope they'll be able to get some good notes to reference when they debate and discuss. And I would like to thank them for sending their representative and for those who have been able to come here. So I don't want to take much time. Kindly welcome the...
Thank you very much. Let's appreciate John for that. So thank you very much, John. I'm going to request Zaid to come and help us with the closing prayer, and then Father John. Zaid, please. Karibu sana.
Good afternoon. I believe we had an educative session and conference, so I'll have to close it with an Islamic prayer. I'll say it in Arabic. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المحظوظ عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. شكرا.
Father John.
Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. God our Father, we thank you for this day that once again you brought us together as your people, as your children, to be able to discuss how well we can use the resources that you've given to us. Your Son left us with a clear message on taxes, that yes, we should give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to you what belongs to you. And what belongs to you is justice, to ensure that justice is done. And is why we are here, Lord. We want to give to you what belongs to you, to ensure that even these taxes are paid in a better way. We present to you all the strategies that have been proposed, all the plans that are going to be made, that you may bless them, that whatever we really want to do, that we may really do it, that together as a people, as a nation, we may be able to ask our leaders to do the right thing. And Lord, we also ask you to bless the food that you've given to us. We really thank you for the food. And we pray for many others who do not have food today, or they're still looking for food, that you may bless them. And we ask you to bless us all through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
You can rise. We do one stanza of the national anthem. Where you are.
E Mungu nguvu yetu,
You are welcome for lunch outside where Alan told us. The consultants to this table, please, and the organizers